Welcome back to Insights at DDLynn Designs, a unique twist in the ancient art of wire. This is DDLynn, and I thought today we'd do a little fun weaved pendant with a little gemstone. So I'm going to be using two pieces of wire. One is 16 gauge and the other is 18 gauge. They are both round and they are 7 inches long. So what I've done is I just created, they're both very similar, these darling little weaved pendants. And I added some really cute little faceted amethysts down here on the bottom. So anyways, I measured my bead that I want to use in my next design, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. So I have a 4mm round amethyst bead. And so you want to decide on your bead size. You can use a really big bead. You just need to add more wire and make sure that when we're shaping our frame, so this is 2 wires here, that your inside frame, for example, on this one, is big enough to hold your bead, okay? So I'm gonna start with my 16 gauge, and I'm gonna come down on my number 5 on my 6-step bail making pliers. And I'm just gonna grab both these wires and very closely to the barrel, I'm going to squeeze them around and cross them over. Now I may be opening this up, I'm not sure, but we'll make corrections as we go. So here's what you should have. And now I'm gonna come up 3, and I'm hoping that's big enough. I'm gonna come up 3 sizes. So here's my 5th, or come down 3. So I'm gonna come on my number 3 for my next barrel. I'm just gonna center up my mark in between both those barrels. Then I'm gonna push the sides very close to the barrel. Before I cross these over, I wanna pick up my bead and see if I need to open this up a little bit. And I do just a little, so I'm gonna come up with my round nose pliers because that'll allow me to spread it out just a little bit more without going up a size up on the 6-step bail making pliers. So I'm just gonna open this up a little bit and slide it down on my round nose. And then I'm gonna cross my legs over. Now I'm gonna get my bead, and that's much better. I want some gap space in there, okay? So now I'm gonna line up, and you can decide, you need gap space on the top, okay? So I'm gonna be making this one bigger. So I wanna line up my legs, and then all I'm gonna do is get my flat nose, and right where this X is, I'm gonna hold very firmly. I'm going to squeeze the wires together like we're making a bail. Then I'm gonna set this one down in here. And I'm gonna squeeze those over a little bit more. Straighten that out a little bit. Then I'm gonna come down right about in here and squeeze those legs together. Let's straighten my wires out. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. I've got some gap space in there to work with. I'm gonna open this up just a little bit more. Just doing some tweaking. Okay, so now I'm going to get my hammering block, and I'm going to hammer. You hear me digging around for it? I'm going to hammer the arc of this loop. Now this is 16 gauge wire, so you have to use more pressure than usual. Okay, let's take a look at that. That looks pretty good to me, and it's time for a new buffing block. This is the back, which isn't really going to show a lot, but I like to buff both sides. And this is this is the back. I'm going to have to mark my front so I remember. I've been awful lately about not marking, and then I end up working on the wrong side. There's nothing like a new buffing block. Oh, they work so good. That's why I buy them in the case. They're not very expensive, and they're so, so helpful when wanting to take the edge off of something, the nick out of something. They're just awesome. Okay, so now I'm going to set this back down in here. I'm going to get my bead just to see how everything's lining up. That's going to be great. Then I'm going to hammer this just gently. So I'm going to hold the legs. Okay, let's take a look at that. Now we're going to get about 4.5 feet of any size weaving wire you want. I use 26 gauge on this, but I want to use a lighter weaving wire on this next one. So I'm going to be using a 28 gauge weaving wire. So let's take a look. Perfect. Got good gap space so I can get in there and weave. So I'm going to cut 4.5 feet of weaving wire. So what you want to do is you want to fold your wire in half. And we're going to start, and let me mark these so I know I stay on my front. Like I said, I've been horrible that way lately. I won't need to do it now on this one because I've got my big one marked. So what we're going to do is we're going to come through the middle of our inner hoop. And then we're going to, I got to come through both of them at the same time. Let me open these up. I need some working room. So let me do this again. So you're going to have your middle loop right here. And you want to separate your wires a little bit so you have some working room. We're going to be adjusting those later. And you want to come down on the 2 right wires. And then you want to line up, and you're going to be moving this around quite a bit. You'll be able to make your adjustments before you really cinch it down really good. So I'm going to hold the left side tail, and I'm just going to come around the outside 16 gauge wire. Just got to leave yourself some decent gap space. And then I'm coming up underneath, and I'm going to come around the outside on the other side of the 16 gauge wire. Now I'm going to do the same pattern. So I'm going to come up over both, come back in the middle, And I'm going to come around the inside right side loop wire. Did I wrap around the bottom? I'm trying to remember if I wrapped around the bottom down here. You know what, I didn't. So let me back out of that. I meant to wrap around that bottom base wire first. Okay. Yeah, I didn't. I didn't do a full rotation around that base wire. Now that's what we should have. So now I'm going to wrap over in between all 4 of those wires. Okay. Come back up underneath that inside wire. Come back up in between all 4 of them, and then wrap around the outside. Wrong pliers. So I'm going to turn around. I like to do a little bit of each side to maintain my symmetry. Open these up a little bit. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm coming underneath. I'm going to go over and in between the middle wires here. Then I'm going to wrap around the second wire right here. And then I'm going to come back up and over and in between. And I'm back around the top again. So I'm going to wrap around the bottom wire 1 full rotation. You got to watch that you don't pull too close together. I'm feeling like I'm getting a little tight here. So that you can keep getting your weaving wire in there. So I'm just going to go around in between, then over these 2, then back around in between, and then back around the outside wire. My wire got a little wavy there when I was yanking on it. So I'm coming around the back. I'm going to go in between these 2 wires here and wrap around it. And it's catching up on something. There we go. And pull it through. Back in between and around the back, and 1 full rotation on this outside wire. I want to see where I'm at because I'm going to start doing more coils on the bottom. Basically, what we're going to be doing is weaving up until we can get the wire to meet the middle of our stone. So it's going to be somewhere up here, about a 1/4 way up the arc in these loops. So I'm going to do 1, let's see, that's my middle, that's 3. Okay, so now I'm going to do 3 coils on the outside wire. That's 1, that's 2, that's 3. Then I'm going to do 3 coils on this side. Remember, one's coming over the top and one's going underneath. So now I'm going to come up in between. Then I'm going to wrap in between these two wires here, come back around and through the two wires in the middle, push them in, and then do 3 coils. So I did my 3 over here. So I'm going to wrap over these 2 outside wires here, coming in the middle. If your wire gets caught up, then just come back in between these 2 wires here. I tend to like to cut corners and, oops, did I wrap around that bottom? I did. Never mind. Okay, so now I'm going to come back in between, and then I'm going to do 3 coils. I'm definitely not ready to bring that bead in yet. So I've got my 3 coils, and just the same thing. I'm going to be coming back in the middle of the loop, go in between the 2 outside wires, come back in between, over both of them, wrap around the outside wire 3 times. And then I'm going to check, because I'm thinking I might be there. So let me do this side. Then 3 coils. I feel that crossing over in the back. Okay, so I'm going to put my bead in to see if my wire is going to meet up with it. So I'm looking where my hole is, and I'm just a little shy. And it doesn't have to be directly on the bottom, y'all. You can have it as high up as you want, as long as it's going to fit. So what I'm going to do now, because I need to get my wires in the same working direction. So this wire is coming out the back, and this one is coming out the top. So I'm going to bring this wire over the inside loop and bring it back in between the 2 outside wires. Now this one's coming out the back, so I'm going to bring it in between these 2. No, I can't do that. I gotta come, well, that's gonna make 4. Hold on. Let me think about this, because I just did this on another one. I'm gonna have to come, but that's gonna, is that gonna unravel that? Yes, but that's okay. So I'm gonna come over and in between these 2. I was thinking out loud there. And back in between. So now they're both coming out in the same direction. They're all over the top, both of them. So now I'm going to set my bead again and see if that wire is going to hit that hole, if I'm high enough. Trying to find the hole. So there's my hole. And I'm going to come up 1 wrap. You got to line it up. So I wrapped around that inside loop wire again, and now I'm coming back in between them and on top. And I got a tangle in my wire. It's a lot of wire here. So same thing over here. I'm going to go in between and come back up. Okay, so now I'm going to feed my bead through. You need to come to the ends of your wire. Get them nice and straight. And I'm going to put, ooh, I would have hated to drop that on the floor. I have so many beads on the floor. Okay, so here's a really good tip when you're doing this and you have so much wire. Okay, you want to slowly pull and you want to keep even pressure on each side while holding the center of the bead. So I'm pulling about 4 or 5 inches, holding the center of the bead and pulling, this came out the wrong way, 4 or 5 inches, and I'm keeping a very healthy loop. I'm going to show you here in a second on the bottom. Do you see this? You want to keep a really good loop there. You do not want to let that wire go straight or tighten up. So I've got a really good loop there, pulling my wire slowly, trying to keep my pressure even, and then pull them in. And that lined up beautifully. You want to make sure that that wire isn't gapping or loose on the other side. So now we're going to start this wrap again. And I'm only going to wrap up a little bit because I'm going to be bringing these wires up. You got to remember you need your gap space in here because once we make our bail, we're going to be bringing our wires through the middle. Okay, so it's really important that you have your gap space there. So I'm going to come in between both these wires again, back up through the middle, and then I'm going to start that pattern. And I think I'm only going to do 2, yeah, I think I'm going to do 2 sets or 2 repeats. So that's 1. I'm going to come back up in between them. And that's 2. Yeah, I think that's as high as I want to go. So I'm coming over the top where my bead is. I'm going to come back in between, pull that good and tight so that my bead is not moving. Then I'm going to wrap the outside wire, come back in between the 2. I'm on the back. Then I'm going to wrap in between them. Then I'm going to come around the back and wrap over the wire on the outside. Did I cross my wire over there? I did. Okay, I crossed over in the back. See that? You see where my wire is crossing over right there? So I'm just going to come out of that and correct that. There we go. Now I'm not crossed over. Okay, so I think now that I've completed this pattern here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide those down so they're nice and snug against my bead. Make sure they're lined up, and I'm going to do 3 coils on the outside. I have 3 full. I have 3 full. Okay. All right, so I'm thinking about changing this pattern up a little bit, but for right now, I'm going to lift these 2 wires up like this, and I'm going to move them back a little bit. And I'm going to start to do my bail back here. So I'm going to lift these up. And cross them on the outside a little bit. And you could actually bring in more beads. Oops. So I'm debating if I want to come up a little bit more, you guys, only because I like the gap space in here. I think I'm going to leave it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to snap my wire down here. I'm going to hold very firmly and just do a little wiggle jiggle, and it's going to snap clean off, and we're going to be working with 2 wires again. So I'm going to come on the outside here and on the outside here of my frame, and I'm going to start underneath, and I'm going to make 3 full rotations. So my wire is coming out on top in between these 2. I'm going to slide this down. I got to get this wire back for a minute. He's got to be on the outside. And then I'm going to come in between. I'm going to spread these out. I'm going to bring these 2 closer together. So I'm coming in between the middle wires. I'm going to slide this up right where this bend here meets almost this bend. And I'm going to wrap over this outside wire and go in between. And now the wire's coming around the back. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. I've got my other piece of wire that I cut from before. Let's see, how's that coming out? So that's coming out this way. So I'm going to make 3 full wraps. And then I'm going to be coming over the top. And I'm going to slide this wire all the way down. Is that coming out the right way? Yeah. Just want to line them up. Then I'm going to come over the wire on the front here, in between, and now it's coming out the top. So you just want to line them up. Get my little tails out of the way. Okay, so now I'm going to take this wire here that's coming out the top. I'm going to go around this back wire and come in between it. And then I'm going to go back in between the 2 and all the way around in between them again until it's coming out the top in the middle. So same thing, same exact thing. I'm coming around the back. I'm going to come in the middle, go over in between these 2, and now they're both coming out in the middle. So here's a wire here, and here's a wire here. So now I'm going to bring in this wire a little bit closer, and I'm just going to come up a little bit because I'm already tight right here, and I'm going to pitch it in. Flatten it. I'm always going to turn my work around in my best working position, and I'm going to pitch that wire in. I'm going to bring these together in the middle. There we go. Like that a lot better. You kind of have a little, if you can see it, almost like there's a little basket in here. So if you wanted to start adding in beads, you could do that. So both the wires are coming out the top. One's on the right and one's on the left. We're going to cross them over. Then we're going to come underneath. Sorry, in between these two. Then we're going to wrap around in between the two middle ones. And then we're going to slide this down and wrap around the outside wire. So same thing over here. We've crossed them over. I'm going to come in between the two outside wires, come back in between the two middle wires, and now I'm going to do a full rotation all the way around this outside wire. And the wires are now coming over the top and around the back. And you want to cinch down. Now I'm secure enough to where I'm going to cut these tail wires off. I'm going to pull them in really good. Get way down in there. And cinch them down. So we're just going to keep doing this pattern. And I'm going to do it about probably a little less than an inch. It's going to be a bigger pendant than these. So it's the same thing. I'll do a couple more of these patterns so that you can get it down. So it's on top, it's going to come around the back, and it's going to go in between these two wires here in the middle, then completely all the way around and back through the middle. Same thing over here. I'm going to turn my work over. So I'm going in between the two middle wires and then all the way around and back through the middle. So they're both coming out the top. Then we're going to cross them over. So I'm going to cross this one on the right to my left and in between the two outside wires, and this one on my left to my right in between the two outside wires. Now we're going to come back up through the middle and over this outside wire. And this time we're going to make 2 coils. So this one's coming over this second wire right here. Going to come back in the middle. I'm going to go over this outside wire. Got a lot of wire going on here. Oops, I think I missed it there. And I'm going to do 2 coils. Now I'm going to slide everything down. Really cinch it up good. Now someone asked me, because I have a tutorial on doing this 2-wire weave to make a bail, why I can't just do one side and then do the other, because you have to cross them over in the middle in order to continue on each side. So you could do this as 1 wire, but I like it with 2. So that's how I'm doing it. So I'm coming up the top, I'm going to cross over, and this wire, I'm going to cross over and come in between. So they're both coming in between these 2 wires on the outside. Then I'm going to come in the middle and around my outside wire, 2 coils. So back in the middle and around my outside wire, 2 coils. Then I'm going to cinch them down. So let's do this one more time, then I'll measure to tell you how high up I'm going to weave. Okay, we're on the top. Coming around to the outside wire. Okay, so we are, oh, I'm sorry. We already completed that, you guys. We did our 2 coils. So now I'm going to come in between the middle, in between the 2 outside wires, and all the way back through the middle again. Same thing here, in the middle, in between the 2 outside wires, and all the way back in the middle again. So now we're going to cross them over. So my right one's going to the left and in between the 2 outside wires, and my left one's going to the right in between my 2 outside wires. Then I'm going to bring it back through the middle and make 2 coils. So this one's already coming in between the middle and over the outside wire. And I'm going to make 2 coils. And then I'm going to cinch them down. It's a really neat pattern. And the closer you have it together, the more it looks like a zipper. It's really trippy based on how you have your wires separated. Okay, so let me tell you how high up I'm going to come. So I've already got a little over 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to stop right below the 1 inch mark, and I'll be right back. Okay, you guys, I changed my mind. I was thinking of something else. I'm actually going to weave 1.5 inches. No, because I need enough wire to get around and through. I'm going to weave up 1.25 inches where I put my initial mark to remember. So here's the neck down here. So I'm going to weave up 1.25 inches. So I wanted to pop back in because I'm running out of wire. So I'm thinking 5 feet would be better if you're making this size of a pendant. So I'm a little short. I'm not all the way up to my mark yet. And was gonna stop anyways here because I'm gonna start weaving. I'm gonna change it up a little bit from this and start weaving the middle wires only. So what I'm gonna do here, since I'm running out of wire here, I'm just going to wrap 4 times around these. And so you can see that now I'm working. I have to push this little itty bitty piece of wire through there. So they're both coming out the back. So now I'm going to snap these. Hold very firmly. Don't let your weave slide up when you're doing this. Hold it down super firm. But I wanted to show you, isn't that cool? It's like a little zipper in there. There's something about when you do a 2-wire weave Your wires don't slide. And it's just so pretty. It's just a really beautiful, beautiful way to weave. It takes a little bit longer. So I'm going to need to bend this over, but what I'm going to do is I've decided that I want some more bare wire on the outside on this one. So I'm going to start weaving in because I'm going to bend right about here to start my bail at the 3/4 inch mark. So I'm just going to work off my spool. And I'm going to take my weaving wire. Actually, I want it to stay around the back. So I'm thinking about how I want to snap my wire off, and I want it to snap off on the back. So yeah, so I want to come in between these two. I'm going to make 3 full coils, and then I'm going to slide this down. Then I'm going to come over and do the same thing, and I'm just going to do a basic figure 8. You can see how when you're using one wire, how much easier the wire will slide on you. I'm always holding my finger against my weaving, and if you watch closely, I'm constantly lifting it up and putting it back down. Now I'm going to stop here. I'm going to slide these down. And I'm going to snap this off on the back because I want it to break clean on the back. Okay. Isn't that the coolest thing? I just love the way that looks. So now I'm going to start, I'm going to lean this forward just a little bit. I'm going to use my finger. You can use a tool. When I first started out, I used a tool, but I'm much happier with using my hand now because tools can really wreck your weaving. So that's going to be perfect. I didn't want a huge bail, but you can do a huge one. And I'm going to feed these wires through, just watching how I'm bending here. Want these to be nice and even. Isn't that pretty? Just that little zipper effect right there in the middle. Now, I'm not sure I can get all 4 through, so I'm going to do something a little bit different. So I'm going to even up this length, and the 2 wires that I'm going to be bringing through are actually my thickest wires. So I'm going to move my outside wires away a little bit. And to make my life a little easier, I'm going to pre-shape the tips of my wires so that I can roll them in. This is 16 gauge, so it's a much harder wire to manipulate. Now, to make my life a whole lot easier, I'm going to push those wires through. Just going to keep pushing them through. And they're crossing over, so I'm going to uncross them. Oops, I think I actually crossed them, did I? No, they're just so close. My gap space there for this 16 gauge isn't very big, so they're just going to look crossed over. So I'm thinking about these back ones. I'm going to go ahead and snap this wire. Don't need it anymore. So let's bring these over and in, just massaging it, because I'm going to tie these 16 gauge to those. So I'm pushing them in just like that. Now you might have a heck of a time if you use 16 gauge to swing these wires around. So you got to do it slowly. Because I'm going to trap these in back here. I want them nice and lined up. And these are very long. Not going to need all that length, but I'm using it right now to get the wires to go where I want them to go. So I'm going to cut this because I don't think I'm going to bring it through. Do I want to bring it through again? No, I don't think I want to. I'm going to get my super flush cutters because finally, I just got to tell you guys, after 4 years, these are my favorite pliers. They were the best flush cutters I've ever had. Unbelievably sharp, super stainless steel, and they're made by Eurotool. And they're very inexpensive, and I've bought $70, $80 flush cutters, $30 flush cutters. I think these are $11. I finally bit into the blade a little bit right there. And I could start feeling as I'm cutting my wires, it tugging. So I had bought 2 pairs because I was so afraid they were going to not sell them anymore. And what a difference. Because I'm not going to use these on 16 and 18 anymore. But I did use those for that. That's what super flush cutters are for, to cut your heavy gauge wire. So I need to think about where I want to tuck this in, because I want these to ride up in the middle. So I'm just going to cross them over for right now. I want them really snug up against here. And I think I'm just going to bring that over even more. It's a very tough wire. Then I'm going to clip it. That's still too long, but you need to get your shape going when you're working with a very heavy gauged wire. You got to shape it in the direction that you want it to go. I'm going to trim this down a little bit more because I've still got some good gap right here. So that's what I'm monitoring. And then I'm going to tuck it in. That's perfect because this is my back. And this is my front. So now I'm going to really crank that in. Then I'm going to curl it. So I'm pre-shaping my wire so that I put memory in it so it knows where I want it to go. And I know that's a little too long still. But there's this old saying, measure twice, cut once. So you're better to take a little bit off at a time, and these super flush are very, very sharp. So you can take off just a shaving. And then I'm going to bend it in, and that's absolutely perfect. So I'm just going to line them up on the back. That's our back. This is our front. So now, because I'm changing this up, I really like the crossover. And as I mentioned earlier, you could have run some beads all the way through here. You just would have spread your wires out. The concept is the same, using 2 wires, making 2 loops, and just deciding on how you want to design this pretty little pendant. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift these up a little bit. and I'm going to bring them through. I've got just the perfect amount of wire, and this 18 gauge will be much easier after struggling with that 16 to swing it through. I am not going to clamp down or tighten anything up until I do my other side. Because I always want everything to be symmetrical as possible. You also don't want to squeeze your side walls of your 2-wire frame here too tight. So now I'm going to come around. Let's see how you can see this. Here's the back, and I'm just going to gently start to flatten that round wire against the back as it's squeezing this wire up and through. You'll be able to see it better on this side. So see all that gap there? I'm anchoring off the wire on the front and the back. And just feeding it through without compromising my frame up here. Now I'm just going to flatten that over the frame. I'm not pulling. I'm going to flatten that over the frame. Very cool. Like that. And it's just enough wire to bring it around. Almost a little short, but that's okay. We're going to make it work. I can always cut this and file it, sand it. Okay? If you got a little nubby there, and I might do that. I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to cut it down. This one was long enough, but this wasn't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I would modify this. I'm going to open this up and cut it flush to the frame. So it's flush with the frame. And these are so sharp, these super flush cutters. So they're perfectly flush to the frame. I can barely feel them. But just to ensure there's nothing sharp, I'm going to buff those edges off. It's nice and smooth. You can't even feel it. Careful not to buff your gemstone. Yeah, I don't even know it's there because they're tucked below this loop. So they're actually below it. So you can't even feel it. So isn't that the cutest? Turned out so, so cute. It would be really pretty to run little 2mm beads through here, whether they're copper beads or gemstone beads, all the way through. So let me know what you think, y'all. I hope you really like that. Would love your feedback and your comments. So this one is 16 and 18. This one is 18 and 20 gauge. I hope that you guys really enjoyed that. Anyways, I wish for all of you all that you wish for yourselves. May you have a magical, wonderful wire wrap day. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Bye for now.